50 Shades Darker is the sequel to 50 Shades of Grey, and it continues the love story set up with Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele. After having a heartbreaking argument at the end of the first movie, they begin this movie by getting back together right away, and then the remaining 2 hours is them talking, going to parties thrown by family, arguing, and then sex. And nothing else. Oh yeah, and you'll occasionally get subplots sprinkled in like a helicopter crash, some crazy submissive, and a rapey boss. But other than that, nothing! And eventually, after 2 hours of stiff acting, cringy dialogue, and pretty much nothing important happening in the plot, the movie ends, and you realize you wasted your time. I actually watched 50 Shades of Grey recently to prepare for this movie because I did not see it when it originally came out, and it did not disappoint as far as being horrible. Everyone was right with how horrible that movie was. I was astonished. I went back to my worst list of 2015, and I owe Unfinished Business an apology. 50 Shades of Grey is way worse than that. However, 50 Shades of Grey at times made me laugh. Unintentionally, obviously, so I was hoping with 50 Shades Darker that it would have more laughs in it at least. And I did laugh unintentionally at one line that was truly hysterical when uttered, but other than that, no laughs, no entertainment, nothing at all of importance. This somehow is worse than the first one. It pretty much makes the same mistakes that the first movie did. The acting, once again, phoned in, wooden, stiff. Dakota Johnson has been in several things over the years, and I liked her in a movie called Black Mass. She had a very small role in that, but she was good in it. And How to Be Single, she wasn't the worst thing ever, but it's in these movies where I'm just like, you are so bad. It's like she doesn't even want to try at all to make this a good thing. But what I find astonishing is that so many people are in love with this woman, but she's so monotone and so boring that I can't even imagine anyone finding her interesting. And once again, her character is pathetic. At the end of the first movie, she stands up to Christian Grey, but in the beginning of this movie, she literally just goes right back to doing whatever he wants. She really is such a pathetic and stupid character, and Christian Grey, Jamie Dornan, I've heard that he's good in a show called The Fall, which he might be. He hides his Irish accent very well. I'll give him that. It's just his character and acting so bad. Once again, he's wooden, he's boring, there's nothing interesting about this character who should be the most interesting aspect of this whole movie as far as who he is as a person and his backstory. No, not interesting whatsoever. In fact, they barely even go over the backstory. The movie opens up with a child abuse nightmare that he has where he, as a kid, is hiding under a table, and I guess either his dad, uncle, grandpa, not sure, they don't point it out at all. He comes under looking on the table like, oh, there you are, boy, get over here. And I guess it's implying that that person put cigarette burns on his chest that you see later in the movie. And he's having this dream, and Christian Grey just goes, no! So not only did they do that stupid thing where characters will just go, no, 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 in their dreams, but they open up the movie promising like, okay, we're gonna delve more into the backstory, the character, the mindset of Christian Grey. They barely do that. They bring up his boundaries, I guess, that has something to do with his cigarette burns, but they don't explain who, if that was his grandpa, or dad, uncle, like, no idea. They just explain that his mom died, and he got adopted by the Greys. That's pretty much all they do. And speaking of that boundary scene, he grabs Anastasia Steele's hand and gets some lipstick, like, you want to touch me? Well, here, these are my boundaries. Don't touch here. And I was just like, oh my god, that is so stupid. Plus, it's just plainly obvious that you probably shouldn't touch the areas where there's obvious scars. By the way, Anastasia Steele and Christian Grey, still no chemistry at all. They are still so terrible together. There's nothing special about their performances. They don't click. And even during the sex scenes, when you get to them, because there's just so many of them, like there's nothing sexy about them because you feel like these two don't belong together. So when you're seeing them doing the deeds on camera, you're just like, I don't buy into this relationship, so why are you showing me this scene? And yes, guys, the sex scenes. Everyone wants to talk about the sex scenes. That's why 50 Shades of Grey is so popular. It's the sex. Just like with the first first movie, they're barely there. In fact, I think there's fewer than the first movie, and when they are there, they're not really as raunchy as you might be expecting, because everyone builds it up like, oh, Christian Grey's into some dark stuff, man. And I even went into the first movie thinking this might be really uncomfortable to watch, and it really is just so basic of a scene, honestly. And the same thing happens in this movie, and it's pretty much the same stuff. They make out in the shower for a bit. He spanks her in the buttocks. At some point in the film, Christian Grey uses like a spreader bar, if you know what that is, and then he uses like some Benoit balls. That's like the only thing that actually stood out as far as those scenes go, because I had never heard of Benoit balls before, but now I know. And even that scene had the line that I laughed at a lot. He pulls them out to show Anastasia, and she's like, oh no, Christian, those aren't going up my butt. And I laughed hysterically. That line was the only thing to make me crack a smile. It was the funny, like the way she delivered it was so funny. And then the scene proceeds and it makes no sense because he pulls out the Wenba balls and he puts them up, and she's wondering like, oh, what do they do? And Christian Grey's like, you'll see later. So they get in a car and they drive over to a family party that Christian Grey has. They walk out and they go to some seats. And as soon as Anastasia Steele sits down, all of a sudden she reacts like, oh, and Christian Grey goes, and that's what they do. And you're just like, wait, did they start doing that because she sat down? Because she was just in a car, like on the way to this family party. So did they not work then? But what I'm trying to say is, as far as like sexy scenes go, there's barely any in this movie, so you're just left with boring talking and arguing and them going on dates and family parties. That's pretty much the entirety of this movie, and you might be wondering, well, Jackson, what about the other characters in the movie? Aren't they important? No. I'm just gonna mention this guy real quick because he's the most pathetic thing of this movie. Jose, he's pretty much the Taylor Lautner of this movie. He's the friend zone guy. They literally just get him out of the way in the first 10 minutes. He has an art exhibit, and one of the subjects there is Anastasia Steele, and there's like 6 paintings of her, like doing this with her sweater. And even that reaction, like, was so boring and stiff. She was just like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, put some more emotion in that. And Jose comes up like it's all normal, like, oh yeah, you see these paintings of you? And she's like, well, why did you do that? And he's like, well, if I asked you for permission, you would have told me no. Like, they turned Jose creepy, and he was like a nice guy in the first movie. But guess what? All the paintings of her are bought, and someone comes up to tell Jose, hey, those paintings, they were just bought. And he's like, oh my god, who bought them? And all of a sudden, Christian Grey pops up, and it's just like, ah, dang it, Jose. You thought he had a chance. There's even a scene later in the movie where, okay, spoilers, who frickin' cares, where basically Christian Grey announces, hey, we just got engaged, and you get a shot of Jose just going like, yeah, Jose, no. Now, when I watched the trailer for this movie, it opened up me thinking, like, this is the same old bullcrap. But then they introduced some elements in the later half of that trailer that made me go, oh, so they're gonna change it up a bit. There's this mystery girl, a boss, Kim Basinger's in this movie, a helicopter crash. What's this all about? And it turns out they're all about nothing. Like, Kim Basinger shows up in, like, I want to say 3 scenes at the most. That's it. And she's pretty much the character who introduced Christian Grey to all of this weird stuff that he does, and she's supposed to be an important part of this movie, yet she barely makes an impact. But by the end of it, she becomes kind of important because Christian Grey's adoptive mom, like, slaps her in the face, like, how dare you do this to my son, or something. Like, that was supposed to be emotional. Like, yeah, go, Christian Grey's adoptive mom. In your face, Kim Basinger, but she was barely in the movie, and I kind of forgot about her when she showed up again. Plus, you can't tell what emotions Kim Basinger is trying to go for because her face is just so Botoxed. And I don't mean to be mean or anything, but it was just so obvious that she had a hard time, like, showing off emotion. And then there's this boss, okay? His name is Jack Hyde. He's the boss of this publishing place, and he's Anastasia Steele's boss. And he basically finds her attractive, and his whole thing, I thought was gonna go somewhere. It technically does, but not really. It goes in a direction in the worst way possible. Basically, he makes moves on Anastasia Steele, like he takes her out to get a beer. At one point, he literally flirts with her when HR is like right in front of him. And then there's one scene where Anastasia Steele basically says, I'm not going to New York with you like you wanted me to. Now I'm gonna try to leave the office, and he basically like shuts the door. And he's basically a big creeper. Like, who wouldn't be creeped out by this guy? But then as soon as he's got his hand up on the door, you think, oh no, this is bad news. continues. Guess what? Anastasia Steele just kicks him in the nards. She runs away, and then the guy is gone for the rest of the movie. They say, we fired him from his position. And then he doesn't show up until the very end, and Anastasia Steele takes his place as boss of this publishing company. Even though she was a secretary? She goes from secretary to boss? And then there's one scene where they pretty much set up how the company likes her because she brings out new ideas like, well, we need to try to go for the 18 to 24 crowd, and everyone's just like, oh, yes, very good. They all walk out, and the guy comes up and like, hey, nice job. And I'm just thinking, like, that's obvious. Like, trying to go for a specific demographic. Like, people do that all the time just because Anastasia Steele said it. Like, it's different? And then after the boss gets fired, he doesn't show up for like a good hour of the movie. Then all of a sudden, at the very end, after Christian proposes to Anastasia Steele properly, gives her rings, there's fireworks at this party. We get a shot of the dude like several feet away from the whole thing, just staring off, all sad and stuff. He's smoking a cigarette. He has this picture somehow of Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele. He takes the cigarette and he burns out Christian Grey's face. And that's the last shot of the movie. To be continued! They end the movie with another cliffhanger, and it's involving this dude that I could not care more about. His subplot impacts the plot in no way. They just have it to have it. They have it, oh, you know what? They have it just so Anastasia Steele can become boss of this company. That's it. That's pretty much it. They also have it so I guess they have a plot for 50 Shades Freed, but after seeing this movie, I know that plot's not going to go anywhere, and he's just going to show up like 3 times, and they're going to take care of him easily. Bella Heathcote shows up as the mystery girl, who's basically a former submissive to Christian Grey, and in the trailer I was like, okay, how is she going to impact the plot? Not a lot. There's one scene where she meets up with Anastasia Steele outside of her workplace, and she's acting all crazy, and then there's one other time where she looks out a window, and there's the girl, and then she wakes up thinking like, hey, were you at the bed? Oh, I guess not. Goes back to sleep. Then there's those are the 3 scenes they do before the big major scene that happens later. Basically, Anastasia Steele is in her apartment grabbing something while Christian Grey's downstairs, and all of a sudden we get a shot, oh, Bella Heathcote right behind her, and she pulls out a gun, oh no! And then there's just talking, and then you're just like, oh, okay. Pretty much just boring talking until BAM! The gun goes off, and you're just like, oh, okay, something gonna happen now? Holy crap! But no, after that gunshot goes off, Christian Grey comes up right away, and like, points like towards Anastasia Steele and points to him, so now Bella Heathcote is pointing the gun at him, and he like quickly takes it and goes, kneel, and she kneels, and then he basically tells Anastasia Steele, get out of here, go back to my place, and Anastasia's like, no, Christian, I won't, but why? Like, you were just threatened with a gun, why wouldn't you want to leave? But then Christian Grey comes up with the worst line of dialogue to say at that moment, and it's like, for once, will you just do as you're told? And then Anastasia Steele gets upset by that. First off, why didn't Anastasia Steele just leave when Christian first told her to? Because she was just in a situation where a mystery woman was pointing a gun at her. Why wouldn't you leave? Second of all, why did Christian Grey go, just for once, do as you're told, even though that's all she ever does in these movies? She does what she's told. Why say this? This doesn't make any sense. If the entire movies had been her being disobedient to him, and then all of a sudden him going, just for once, do as you're told, that would have worked. But this is a movie about her giving into him all the time. Why would he say this? Makes no sense, but they have an argument about it like 2 minutes later after Anastasia Steele has a depressing montage of her walking around Seattle, and then all of a sudden they make out after that argument. And finally, the biggest subplot that just does not fit in this movie. Okay, so Christian Grey goes off on a trip somewhere, and just basically he's away. Like, he's not in Seattle. Anastasia Steele's texting him like, can't wait to see you, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, there's a shot of Christian Grey and somebody, some woman, no introduction, just, we get a shot and they're there in the helicopter. And they're flying around, and all of a sudden there's smoke. He's going, oh, mayday, mayday, we're gonna crash! And then we get some more shots of them just, like, gliding down, like, downwards, and you see the smoke, and you're thinking, oh my god, we're gonna get that crash, right? Because you saw them impacting on the ground in the trailer. So I was thinking, they're gonna show that. Nope, they cut away before that can happen. They don't even show them like getting close to the ground and then cutting away. It's just trailing smoke. Mayday, mayday. Cut. The one thing that could have been so bad it was hilarious. A hilarious helicopter crash. They don't even show it. It's in the trailer. And you're not gonna show us why. But it doesn't matter. Christian Grey's missing. The news catches it like, oh no, Christian Grey's helicopter's been found and he's not there. And Anastasia Steele's crying about it with Christian Grey's family for 2 minutes, only for them to go, oh my god, Christian Grey has been found and he's heading back to Seattle right now. And as soon as he says, right now, Christian Grey walks through the door, going like, oh, hey guys, how's it going? What are you crying about? Like, really? Really? He just walks in after being in a helicopter crash. He acts like nothing happened to him. They don't even mention the lady he's with, just, Christian Grey's missing, he's found, there he is at the door. But he acts like nothing just happened and he was just away for a while. Are you kidding me? But what makes no sense? They said he's just been found. He's heading back to Seattle right now. And he's already at the door. Already at the door. He's already there. But they just said they just found him. You see, that's the big problem with these movies. They lack common and logical sense. That's a big issue with both of these movies, and it's probably something I'm going to hate in 50 Shades Freed. They lack common and logical sense. Nothing makes sense in these movies. But people buy into them. People go see them in the theater and act like, either it's so bad it's good, which is not. That's a lie. If anyone tells you that, they're lying. They're just grasping for straws. They either have a guilty pleasure with it, or they actually legitimately like it. But how? It doesn't make sense at all. It fails, like, on every aspect of filmmaking. The fact that anyone can find any enjoyment in this, like serious enjoyment, it baffles me. It baffles me. And that is why I hope that 50 Shades Freed is a huge flop at the box office. I already know 50 Shades Darker isn't, because everyone went out to see it in the theater, but I hope 50 Shades Freed is the one where people realize, you know what? I'm better than this. I don't need to see this. This is garbage. They finally learn their lesson and they just leave it to die. I hope that's what happened. And you might be wondering, well, Jackson, you paid to go see 50 Shades Darker. Wrong. I'm not supporting this franchise. I watched this movie online. And if you want to give me crap about that, boo frickety who frickin' cares about 50 Shades Darker? It doesn't deserve anything. It is garbage. It's worse than the first 50 Shades of Grey movie. It's worse than the Bye Bye Man this year. And I'll be damned if there's another bad movie as atrocious and even worse than 50 Shades Darker. It's impossible. So good luck, future bad movies. You've got a lot to live up to here. And also, before I top it off with a grade, I will say, please, stop including Frank Sinatra songs in these movies. 50 Shades of Grey, Witchcraft, and then in this movie, they didn't even have Frank Sinatra's voice. They brought in some terrible guy to cover I've Got You Under My Skin. I don't know what their obsession is with having terrible pop songs in the soundtrack, but then all of a sudden having a singer with good talent actually have a song, but stop. Stop associating Frank Sinatra with this garbage, and stop having this terrible cover guy sing this song, I've Got You Under My Skin, which is my personal favorite. So yes, if you couldn't tell, I'm gonna give 50 Shades Darker an F, the grade that it deserves. If you see anyone give this a grade higher than an F, if you see anyone give this a positive rating, if you see anyone actually recommending this movie, don't listen to them. They're lying. That's the only way that people can actually like this movie. Because from what I saw, it fails as far as being a film, a competent film. It fails on every level. But if you've seen 50 Shades Darker, leave in the comments below of what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.